Hoop 7 proudly brings to you Basketball Hustle.
Ellis fumbled the ball. 2 on the shot clock. Goes up a prayer. Yes! As he was falling to the ground, it's a 3. He shot it literally from the hip.
Definitely a highlight.
Here come the Billikens. 4 on 2. McCall. Ellis. Left corner.
We're missing out.
Bang! From way down under. Cody Ellis. Reddick brings low out away from the best. Stolen away by Cody Ellis. One man to beat. To the hole. He's fouled. Layup. Good. Whistle foul. Count the basket.
Ellis for the reverse. Through fingertips. What a move. Ellis drops in a bomb.
I love seeing Cody Ellis coming out, feeling good.
Ellis. Cody Ellis. Ellis. Pull-up jumper. Cody Ellis. Bang. Cody Ellis, can he stand and deliver? Cody Ellis.
Now it's time for another episode of Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle.
Hello and welcome to Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle for another weekend. This might be our biggest ever show in terms of things to talk about, Cody, so we'll get straight into it, and it's good to have you back, first of all. So we're here thanks to Hoop 7, and we're fresh off a remarkable finish from the Perth Wildcats to beat Melbourne United to close round 10 in the NBL, and that was just 24 hours after the Tasmania JackJumpers had the most incredible of finishes against the Sydney Kings as well. The day before that, we had a double overtime for the Cairns Taipans against the Illawarra Hawks. 2 really big wins for the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. Plenty of drama for us to talk about, Cody. We'll get to our Player of the Year award with Matty Knight, Damo Award for the Best Defensive Player with Damien Martin, the Galen Best Team Man with Scott Ninnis. That looks like a pretty jam-packed show, Cody. Yeah. But first of all, I'm Chris Pike, and it's good to have you back. How are you feeling?
Yeah, good, mate. Yeah, better now. So, apologies for missing last week, but COVID knocked me on my ass, and I was not up to it. So, good to be back, man. And like you said, lots to talk about.
And as we talked about, it's very hard to record a podcast if your voice isn't holding up.
Yeah.
But your second bout of COVID, did you survive it all right?
Oh, only just. No, this one hit me a lot worse than the first time. First time I just had the sniffles, and then that's what I expected this time, and wasn't the case. But happens, and over it now, which is great.
Now, last time we did a show, we talked about how Lauren had just come down with COVID, and you were hoping to avoid it, and your mother-in-law had just arrived. 2 weeks later, how's her trip going? Because hopefully COVID hasn't ruined it too much.
No, it certainly did for the first week and a half, all cooped up inside. But no, it's good now, out and about and doing all the touristy things that Lauren and I really haven't done a whole lot of anyway. So it's been really good. It's been really good.
Especially for Lauren. Is she seeing places around here that she's never seen before?
Yeah, so I went to the Freo prison over the weekend, and I mean, that's something I haven't done since primary school, I think. Little bits and pieces, and it's been a lot of fun, and kind of just looking at all the, like I said, touristy stuff, and Lauren's loving it as well.
Plenty to talk about on a basketball front as well, Cody. So let's get straight into it. We're here thanks to Hoop 7, of course. And if you haven't done your Christmas shopping yet, head to Hoop 7 in the Perth City if you get the chance. Or you might just be able to still get your orders in for Christmas if you head to hoop7.com.au. Give it a go anyway.
Yeah,
Jason and his team will do their best to get it out to you. You won't be spoiled with choices, but we're not spoiled in terms of shortages of things to talk about either, Cody. And before we go through this list of talking points, have you ever seen a more remarkable way to finish 3 games than we saw 3 days in a row? So double overtime for the Cairns Taipans against Illawarra Hawks, and then we saw Tasmania JackJumpers. They looked dead and buried against the Sydney Kings, and then they finished off that game, I think it was 26-4 to end up winning that grand final rematch. And then Monday night, the Perth Wildcats were dead and buried, 8 points down, and they found a way to win the game against Melbourne United. Corey Webster on the buzzer. We'll talk in depth about them shortly, but quite remarkable what we're seeing right now.
It was just crazy. Like, I just feel those games is a bit baffling, really. The double overtime with Cairns and the Hawks was a really good game. Always good to get some free basketball as well. But one of those games where Cairns probably should have buried them and just didn't. Hawks came out and played really well. And then Tassie just doing what they do and just being relentless all game, and it just shows, and rocking the Kings. And then, like you said, some heroics late last night. Toddy Blanchfield hitting a big 3 and getting the and one, and then trying to make the free throw but missing it perfectly and it falling into his hands, and Corey being the hero in his 250th, which was a fairly fairy tale ending for him. And wild way to end round 10.
It absolutely was. I think the biggest takeaway for me is that all of a sudden, we talked 2 weeks ago about how we thought the Kings and the Breakers were a fair way ahead of the pack. I don't think we can say that anymore.
No, not at all. Not at all. I think the Kings sitting at 10-4 are lucky to be sitting there. Could very easily be 8-6 and middle of the pack.
Yeah.
With those 2 game-winning shots in those few weeks. But they look so good for 3 quarters in this round, both games. They look so good for 3 quarters and then just kind of fall asleep at 3/4 time and forget to come out in the fourth. And New Zealand, again, they've just kind of taken that step backwards. I think defensively, they're still, for mine, the best defensive team in the league. But just offensively, they seem to have fallen from the wayside a little bit. I don't know what it is, or if their movement's not the same, or if they're just kind of going through the motions. But yeah, it's certainly a bit of a closer league now than we thought a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we'll get into all of that action shortly. I want to get your thoughts on a bit of a talking point, though, Cody. It's been across both the NBA and the NBL, but I think it's a different discussion just because of the way the leagues operate. What's your take on if a game's a blowout, if a team should continue to take their points available at the end of the game, or should you dribble out the clock? What's your take on it?
Look, I do think it depends on the league. We saw Zion do it against Phoenix, and a couple of those boys had something to say to him. But, I mean, look, that's like he said in the press conference after, like they sent us home last year and it was a bit of an exclamation point and proving that he's back and he's here, and it was a heck of a 360 windmill that he threw down.
It was, but it's interesting, isn't it, because it actually doesn't count for anything.
No.
But if you do it in the NBL,
different.
Like Simon Mitchell said after his game, it could be the difference between where you finish on the ladder or making playoffs at all.
It is, and every single point counts. And I think that needs to be something that is brought up to imports coming in.
Well, Tyler Johnson has doubled down on it as well. He said that he wants to continue to call people out that do it. Does he need to understand that it's I think both the Australian culture, but also the fact that percentage plays such a big part in the NBL. Does him and other imports need to understand that that's just the way it's played here? And I think it has to be.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's how it's played. And you know, he obviously had a problem with, I think it was Jack McVeigh in transition with 3 seconds left or whatever it was. But you have to understand that those 3 points could be the difference between Brisbane being in the 6 at the end of the year or not in the 6.
Sure.
And especially for those guys, they need to play to the final siren.
Yeah.
And that's just part of Aussie culture, really, is playing to the very end anyway. But it's just part of this league. Percentage plays a massive part in where you finish in the ladder. And they do. They need to understand it. You know, I get you come from the NBA and all that, and that doesn't matter, and that doesn't. It's a sign of disrespect. Yeah. It's not how it is here, and you're down here now. This is the league. Like, you need to accept that is it. So it's frustrating, but you do. You need to finish the game out, and whether it's you not playing defense in the last 30 seconds because it's already 15 points, doesn't matter. There's still time on the clock. You need to play it out.
Yeah, we've seen teams make and miss playoffs based on points difference in the end of the game. We've seen games in that final round come down to how much you need to win a game by to make the playoffs. And I just like what Simon Mitchell said afterwards. He said that he knows that, you know, guys think it's cool to dribble out the clock, but he would much rather be playing playoffs unfashionably than not playing at all.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And especially when late in games and you've got young guys in there, right? So some teams wait until the last minute, even though it's a 20-point game, to get the young guys in there. When they get out there, you want them to get on the board. You want them to score. You don't want them to grab rebound and then go dribble it in the corner for 23 seconds.
Well, you don't learn anything from that.
No. Like, great, you got on the court, but you know, you don't get anything out of that. You want them to go in and feel part of it and attack the rim and show them what they can do.
And that's probably the highlight of Junior Madut's career so far, that three-pointer that he got fouled on as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it's for the young guys as well. So, look, I don't think it should be a debate. Play to the final siren.
Have you ever had an import that has taken it to that point where they've felt like playing in the NBL at the end of games has been disrespectful? Does anyone stand out?
Not really. No, not off the top of my head. It's never really been too much of an issue in games that I've played.
I think it was Gary Irvin that took offence to Greg Hire. Started a brawl that Perth Arena.
Yep. Oh yeah, that was probably the boiling point because there was plenty of other stuff going on between that. But I think that was it. Yeah.
All right, let's get into what we saw on the court, Cody, because there's plenty to talk about. Let's start Monday night at RAC Arena because Melbourne United finally, for the first time all season, were at full strength and they played well to beat the Brisbane Bullets on Saturday. They just look a completely different team with Shea Ili in the lineup, and having Xavier Radden-Mays then able to come back and play that backup role and as a scorer without having to, have the ball in his hands a lot. They looked a totally different team. And then after a slow start in Perth, they dominated that game, and as we talked about, they just dominated that fourth quarter. And I think Radden-Mays at one point had 11 straight points, and they were up by 8 with 45 seconds to go, and then still up 5 with 10 seconds to go. The unlosable position. Yeah. How did they lose it?
Oh, just choked it away. It was all them. Yep. Everything that needed to go right for Perth did, and they took advantage of it all. I think that Cats came out of the block, obviously. They were up 24-10 and then really came and put his whole bench on. Yes. And then all of a sudden there was I think it was 22-3
from that point.
22-3 run for Melbourne, and they didn't look backwards until the last 45 seconds. But just struggling to get it inbounds on the sideline, passing it straight to, I think it was Shea Ili, letting Travers' long arms come in, get a steal. You got to lead him onto the ball there.
You can't just stand there and wait for it. Yeah.
No, but it was just shocking. There was not a whole lot of movement.
No, they were lucky to get it in before the 5-second
that was
violation.
About 7 seconds. That was a 5-second count, if ever I've seen a 5-second count. But then it's just, they go down. I'm not sure what kind of defense they were doing. Shea was kind of just in no man's land on the defensive end and goes into Todd Blanchfield, and he turns around and gets under his feet and 1-3.
You just let him take the shot. Because if he makes a 3-point shot, it doesn't really hurt you that much. The only way they have a chance is if you foul him.
Yeah, but I don't understand it because Tucker was, it wasn't even a screen. Todd was on the opposite block and just came straight up to the top. Yep. But Tucker was following him, and then the ball went in and Shea kind of turned around and Tucker ran away and I'm not quite sure what their defensive schemes are there, but I'm sure that wasn't it.
No.
But then you're right. He just let him take the shot and got under his feet because he was out of position to start with and 1-3. And then you could see Todd turn around and ask, really, should I miss this? I would have tried to make it because it turns it to a 1-point game.
I think he did try to make it.
He did. 100% tried to make it, like you could see. If he tried to miss that, it wouldn't have gone as perfectly as it did for them.
Yes.
But you could see on the block out after that, Rattan Mays, instead of going and blocking out the shooter and Todd, just basically ran straight under the rim. All of a sudden, ball bounced off the back of the rim. RAC Arenas, they're a bit stiff and that ball bounces like that a lot, which is why you'd see teams come in and not be able to shoot real well there.
It's amazing those rims have never loosened up over 10 years.
I know. I think they must tighten them before every game. But and then it just falls straight into Todd's hands. He didn't move. He didn't move off the foul line. He might have taken a little step to the right, and that's about it. Yep. Turn around, hand it to Webster, wide open, nails it. Nails it, and it's just Melbourne lost it. You know, and all credit to Perth for taking advantage of everything that Melbourne handed back to them. Yeah, it was an incredible finish.
It's amazing that it happened on an offensive rebound because, again, this weekend, the Wildcats, they couldn't rebound the basketball, both against Adelaide and Melbourne. They ended up being 2 wins, but they were out-rebounded 90-67. I think Melbourne had 19 offensive rebounds on Monday night. Then they win on an offensive rebound, but can they still go somewhere this season unless they fix their rebounding?
No, they need to fix it. They have to fix it. Teams come in and their eyes light up. You could see Melbourne had an emphasis on offensive rebounding. And that's what teams are going to do. And at this point, it's hard because teams come in knowing that they can rebound against you. And it's, like I've said before, it's all effort, but you need to be able to box your man out and go get it still. Teams coming in thinking, it's going to just be an easy night on the O boards. And it happens because, you just come in with confidence.
I think Mitch McCarron had 9 against them.
Yeah, exactly. And that's your point guard. So... it's just they need to fix it. They really need to fix it, and it needs to happen sooner rather than later because it's starting to get to the pointy end already.
Yeah. Last thing on the Wildcats, What are your thoughts on Corey Webster? We didn't get the chance to talk about him last week on the back of what he did going back to New Zealand, and then he comes back and after being such a villain for the Red Army for such a long period of his career, he's probably now their number one hero this week. What are your thoughts on Corey being able to do that in his 250th game?
Oh, it's really good to see. It's good to see, and just ever since that New Zealand game, his confidence has just skyrocketed. You saw him inserted into the starting lineup last night, and I think that's where he should be. You could see him coming off the bench. He just doesn't feel comfortable, I don't think, as much as he said he was going to embrace it. And I think he tried, but I just think some guys, especially with a guy of his caliber who has started his whole career and been the main focal point, it's hard to change that up, right? So he probably wasn't really used to it, and he came out a bit lackluster. You're used to something, and then all of a sudden it changes. It can mess with your rhythm and momentum and your confidence, and I think we've seen that a bit to start the season. So for him to come out and do what he's been doing since that New Zealand game, I think is really good. And then to be able to hit the game winner in front of your home fans, in your 250th is huge for him, and I think if him and Bryce can keep doing what they're doing, then all of a sudden Perth become tough.
Clearly Melbourne look a lot better this weekend with their full squad available, but they're still coming from a long way back. I mean, they're now 6-11. Is that loss going to be the one that potentially cost them a playoff spot? Yeah,
I think that was a must-win for them. And they would have come in with all the confidence in the world, winning 9 of the last 10, I think it was.
Yeah, they'd won 7 in a row in Perth.
Yeah. So they've kind of cracked the code a bit in Perth. And like I said, they would have come in with confidence and they should have won it. Really, they should have won that.
Yeah.
So that one's got to hurt. That one's really got to hurt. And you're right, I think that could be the one that really just puts a damper on their season at the end of the year.
Tasmania JackJumpers, they're an incredible team. I mean, they just find ways to stay in a contest, and then when it's on the line, they just know how to finish it. They just get it done, and they were dead and buried. 14 points down to start the fourth quarter against the Sydney Kings. Xavier Cooks was dominating that game up until that point. I mean, his finish to the third quarter was incredible, and just as a passer. But then the JackJumpers just know how to turn it up when it matters. I mean, 26-4 they finished that game. Milton Doyle and Jack McVeigh were inspirational, but what they did to the Kings to make the Kings look damn ordinary in that last 8 minutes was just something to behold. I mean, from both points of view, what did you make of it? Yeah, look, I think, and it's been a bit of a talking point on social media right now, is Milton Doyle being in the MVP race. I think he's certainly stuck his hand up to be a talking point in that conversation. I think it makes it hard that it's only been the last couple of rounds that he's really been a standout for them. But he's been unbelievable. He's been so good. He's so talented, and it's really cool to see, because this was kind of the asterisk on this team is who's going to be their go-to guy like Adams was last year. Who can be that guy, and he's definitely stuck his hand up. Completely different demeanour. He's not the outgoing, screaming type that Josh Adams was, but boy, does he get the job done. Yeah, he does, and it's, gosh, that little snatchback 3 he hit was tough, and that was pretty. But, we've seen it so many times. Tassie just grind away. They just grind away. Doesn't matter if they're up 20, down 20, they play the exact same way. And it just wears on teams. And, we saw it early in the season when Melbourne United shot 50, 40, 90 and they still somehow came out and beat them. So that was Milton Doyle again, down the stretch in that game. Yeah, it was. And they've just got big-time players that know how to play in those big moments. And, it's really cool to see. It is really cool to see, because really they are a fairly young team across the board. And everyone is just really calm and composed in those big moments. And, like you said, led by Doyle and McVeigh as well, who's really stuck his hand up this year and has been awesome for them. We were concerned about how Will Magnay would fit back in, but I actually like them with him in the lineup. He seems to be settling in nicely and having more of an impact each game he plays. Yeah, definitely. He hasn't come in and been like, give me the ball. Yeah. He's slotted in nicely. He's slowly getting his feet again.
And he just gives them that different presence and someone that they can throw the ball at the rim and tell them to go get it, which is a bit of what they've been missing. So it's really good to see, and it is a bit of a surprise that he's fit in so seamlessly because we both certainly had our doubts with that.
You touched on the Sydney Kings. Tell me your thoughts on what happens to them in fourth quarters right now.
They fall asleep in three-quarter time, don't they? Goodness me. It's just, I mean, we saw Buford.
He's fully aware of it. He's very frustrated by it.
Well, that's it. And, for 3 quarters, they look like far and away the best team in the league. And, having conversations with Dad as well, he said the same thing. During the Tassie game, he sent me a message. He was like, well, Sydney just look unbeatable. And then half an hour later when the game was over, he just sent me a message saying, oh, never mind. Because it is. It's really crazy that they can – I understand it from game to game if you're up and down a bit and inconsistent. But to have it happen in a game is really strange for a team that's this good. They can be unbelievable, look unstoppable. Like there's no way of you stopping them. The only way that you're going to stop them is hope that they miss a shot. And then even defensively, they look decent, because they're long and athletic and they got younger guys that have bought in. And then all of a sudden, fourth quarter, I don't know what happens. They just kind of fall asleep and think, oh, game's over, we're good, and you saw it against New Zealand. They had 9 points and 9 turnovers in the fourth quarter.
And even the last time they played the Breakers before that, they'd almost blew it in the fourth quarter as well.
They did. And it's just, you can't do that in this league, obviously, like we've seen. They kind of got lucky against New Zealand and were good enough for those 3 quarters to be far enough ahead that it didn't hurt them as much as it did against Tassie. It's just, if they want to be legitimate title contenders again, they've got to fix that fourth quarter because it's been an odd thing for Sydney this year. Start of the year was their free throws. Couldn't make a damn free throw. I think they've turned the corner a little bit on that. But now they've got to fix this fourth quarter because, I mean, that's going to really come and bite them later on.
You talked about big-time players before as well. I love what DJ Hogg is doing for the Cairns Taipans, and he didn't have a great start to the game against the Illawarra Hawks, but boy, when it mattered the most in the game that ended up going to 2 overtimes, I always feel like the bigger the moment or the tougher the shot, the more likely he is to make it. He 100%. Just seems to live for that big moment. The Taipans were probably lucky to escape with that double overtime win against the Hawks, but I just love the way Hogg's stepping up, and you got to credit the Hawks for being able to bounce back from that 39-point loss, and they were probably unlucky not to win, but I mean, what did you make of that one?
He might be one of my favourite players in the league this year. Just kind of goes about his business. It's odd to see because he does go missing at times. And he doesn't seem like that kind of guy that will go into a huddle and be like, oh, I need a shot. It's kind of just he'll take what comes to him, which I actually really like, especially in an import. But you're right. The bigger the moment, the more chance he's got to make that shot because he can be wide open all game and go 0 for 5 or 6, and then you shoots a tough step back over a 6'10" guy guarding him, and it's cash. Nearly every single time, that's cash. It's it's very interesting, but I just love the way he goes about it, and he's certainly something that Cairns has lent on late in games, and he's come through.
Are you sold on the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix yet? They're looking pretty good at 10-6. They won their 2 games in round 10 against the Hawks and the 36ers by 57 points. I think getting Joe Chi back could be the last piece of their puzzle that gives them that extra bit of size with a 7-footer there. Are you sold on them yet, though? No, they need to beat some of the top teams. They've had a fairly good little run, which has probably worked out for them, getting their team back together slowly. Playing some of these lesser teams and, beating up on some of these lesser teams. And we're seeing that they can be a legit contender this year, but I don't think they've played Sydney at all this year yet. No, they haven't.
They've probably still got to play New Zealand, I assume.
No, they've
played them twice.
They finished their series with New Zealand.
Okay.
But they've still got, Sydney 3 times to go, Tasmania twice to go, and Cairns twice to go.
Well, that's it. And that's, 3 of the top 4 teams.
Yeah.
So they've got a tough stretch home. But I think the timing has been perfect for them in getting their guys back, and putting Joe Chi back in this lineup makes them really tough. Because, you got Williams, who's been
He's been terrific.
Unbelievable for them. And he's been so fun to watch just because of his energy.
Yeah.
It's really cool seeing imports with that kind of energy and want and desire, because you don't see it a whole lot.
No.
So, putting Chi back in and having Phoenix at full strength, the way Creek's playing right now as well is huge. And I think if they can start to get some wins over these top teams, then I'm sold on them. But until then, I think there's still that little bit of an asterisk next to them.
Yeah, it's interesting. They haven't beaten a team in the top 4 since October 20.
Yeah.
So, they're doing well, but they're beating the teams you probably expect them to beat.
Well, they also haven't played them, so that doesn't help.
You can't lose to a team if you don't play them either. 2 more things quickly, Cody. Brisbane Bullets. It looks like Sam McKinnon's going to be locked in. He's certainly now asking for the job. Just think he's waiting for the ownership to sign off on it. They've now signed their new import as well. I don't think we know a lot about Andrew White III, but they need that extra body because they've been fighting hard since Sam took over as coach, but they are clearly, a little bit light personnel-wise, especially since Tanner Krebs has gone out and they're still missing Tyrell Harris and Cody Statman's still out. And then, they finally replaced Devondrick Walker.
Yeah, it's really a lot going on in Brisbane right now. I think the guys seem to be responding to McKinnon, which is good because they needed someone to buy into. So if they can buy in properly, then I think they'll be okay. Again, don't know a whole lot about Andrew White III, but I think just that, like you said, that extra body. I think he's a bit of a bigger body as well. Will certainly help because they've been injury riddled, and it's obviously been a frustrating season for them, especially with 2 of their main guys in Sobey and Baines coming back from long stints on the sideline. Baines is still just not right. Sobes has turned a corner.
He's getting back there. Yeah.
He's starting to get back to his old self. But
the big blow was Tanner Krebs. I mean,
it was.
He was just starting to play well and step up, and then he goes down injured.
Yeah, does a really bad ankle, and it didn't look pretty. So hopefully he's back in the lineup sooner rather than later because I think they need that young guy with all that energy and confidence, and he's certainly filled with that.
The other team still waiting for an import. The Adelaide 36ers, I'm almost starting to think it's too late for them, even if they bring somebody in, because what we've seen over the last 2 weeks is that they're a little bit away off the top team. So they lost to Perth, and then they didn't look that competitive against the Phoenix, and the week before they struggled against the Kings, and even though they beat the Taipans, it still probably wasn't a great performance. So they look like they're one piece short of being a top team. But if you're now 6 and 8, is it too late to make a charge?
It's getting there, certainly getting there. And look, I think they need a defensive big. I think that's what they need because look, they can score all they want. They've got enough defense in their guards with McCarron and Cleveland and Sunday
and Drimmick. I think if you bring another person into the backcourt, you take away from those 4 guys, and I don't think you want to do that.
Well, I've said this a few weeks ago. I think with Randall going out, Drimmick's just stepped up unbelievably, and it's so cool to see. I love seeing it because he's kind of had a bit of a down couple of years for his standards, I know. And to see him come in and be that energy guy has been awesome. And, he came in being that kind of shooter scorer, but I think he's been one of the better defensively just because of his energy. But they need, like I said, they need a defensive big. Their bigs don't play D.
Well, Kai Sotto right now is a liability defensively because teams are targeting him.
Go at him.
And you can see how frustrated he is, but his lateral movement isn't good enough to defend in this league right now. No,
and he's relied on his size and athleticism in the past, and in this league that doesn't cut it.
Yeah.
So, and then you got Franks and DJ who aren't known for their defense.
Well, the problem with the bigs is Franks is their best defender.
Yeah.
And he's not exactly a standout defender.
No, he's not. And look, I think he holds his own all right, but you can see teams do just go at them. But look, it's certainly getting pretty late. So if they're going to bring someone in, it needs to be within the next week or so. But they kind of have just been tiptoeing around that, so I'm not sure if they're even going to bother.
What is the hold up at this point? I mean, did the Randall situation just catch them so off guard where they just weren't prepared?
Possibly. And obviously it's hard to try find people now. And I think I did say this a few weeks ago as well. Every league in the world's already going and halfway through seasons, and to find guys of a good caliber they're already on teams. So it makes it hard, especially if you're trying to look for, an exact position and exactly what you want. It's tough because the pickings are pretty slim.
Marcus Lee would have been perfect.
Would have been great for them.
All right, Cody, let's take a deep breath. When we come back, we'll go through those results and see if we missed anything from round 10. Then we'll get to Matty Knight with his Player of the Year award, Scott Ninnis for the best team man, get Damien Martin's votes in the Damo Award, and we'll then look ahead to round 11.
Perfect.
Okay, welcome back to Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. Let's go through the results from round 10 in the NBL, Cody, for anyone that might have missed what happened. And it started back on Thursday night. Top of the table clash this was. And apart from the fourth quarter, the Sydney Kings were pretty impressive, winning 88-81 over the New Zealand Breakers. And then second up, biggest ever win in Southeast Melbourne Phoenix history, 111-72 over the Illawarra Hawks. Friday night, Perth Wildcats, they, despite another tough rebounding night, Bryce Cotton, 32 points, beat the Adelaide 36ers 98-90. Then on Saturday, double overtime, as we've talked about. The Cairns Taipans beating the Illawarra Hawks 102-101. And then Melbourne United, first time all season at full strength, beat the Brisbane Bullets. Then Sunday, another double header. Southeast Melbourne Phoenix, too good for the Adelaide 36ers, 102-84. And then that game we talked about, the Tasmania JackJumpers, incredible comeback to beat the Sydney Kings 84-76. And then Monday night, it all finished off with the Perth Wildcats winning at the death over Melbourne United 90-89. I feel like we've probably covered most things, Cody, but anything else jump out that you might want to touch on?
I guess the only thing for me is the play of Thomas in this round and how different they look when he's aggressive. I think the Cats are a different team when he's aggressive, and Bryce is going to do his thing. Corey looks like he's going to start doing his thing, but they need that third scorer, and I think Thomas can be that. And because he looks really good when he's aggressive.
He does. You're a perfect person to ask this. The past week, one thing has changed in his life, and his family's come to town.
Yeah.
If you're living over the other side of the world without your family, and all of a sudden your family comes to town, how much of a difference does it make?
Huge. Absolutely massive difference. It's especially across the world. It's tough to be away from your family. So for them to come into town, probably just bit of company for him, really, and a bit of taste of home, and he probably is just relaxed a bit. I think that's probably the big thing for him, is just relaxed, and he can just now go out and just play instead of worrying about things off the court now.
Sure.
So no, it's awesome, and it's really good to see.
Same thing happened for Shannon Scott in Cairns as well, and I want to get your thoughts on him because he's not somebody that gets talked about a lot. He's not going to probably be in an all-first team or be in the MVP discussion, but he's a great all-round player. He's such a cool head on that Taipans team. He's a really good defender.
Yep.
He rebounds the ball well for the point guard. Mm-hmm. He can score when he needs to. He's probably the most underrated player right now who's doing a lot for that Taipans team. Yeah,
I think when they signed him, everyone thought that he would be one of those MVP-type contender players. And I think you hit the nail on the head. He's just a cool head. Yeah. He's just, for that team that is so up and down and can be so sporadic.
So many of his teammates are so energetic, so enigmatic. You don't know what you're going to get out of Tajir McCall or Keanu Pinder or even Majuk Deng. Yeah. I mean, there's so many guys full of energy. Having that cool head is... Mirko Jeric is a hothead as well. I mean, he's perfect because he's just so calm. Yeah, he is, and he's just been kind of that glue guy for them. I think between him and Hogg, just having those level heads and those guys that seem to be just a bit more calm, even off the court, I think has been perfect for this squad. And 40's obviously done an amazing job of recruiting and finding those guys. But yeah, Scott's been he's been really good for them and hasn't stood out, like you said, because he's not dropping 30 a night and he's not getting 12 assists as well and 10 rebounds, but he's just doing all the little things for them and has been really solid. No, he has. All right, Cody, that's been a lot to break down from this past week in the NBL, and we're getting to a point where we've got a game every single day as well, so it's going to get hectic moving forward. But before we get to round 11, let's get to our awards for this week, and I'll catch up with Matty Knight first of all, then Scotty Ninnis, and then we'll come back. Sounds good. Okay, back here on Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle, and We will catch up with both the Player of the Year votes from Matty Knight when we get the chance from round 10 in the NBL, so stay tuned to our social media channels for that. From the Nightmare, also the Damo Award in the Best Defensive Player. We'll get his votes as soon as we can from the one and only Damian Martin. But for now, I'm about to be joined by the Adelaide 36ers Hall of Famer Scott Ninnis to get his best team man in the NBL, the Galen winner for this week, and to get his thoughts on all things Adelaide 36ers. Okay, I'm now joined by Scott Ninnis, the Adelaide 36ers Hall of Famer, the only man involved, of course, in every Adelaide 36ers championship, but not the weekend you were hoping to see. Scott, a couple of losses for the 36ers. It's getting tricky.
Yeah, it's been disappointing, mate. There's no question about that. And we spoke this time last week about this could be a real, well, the last 2 weekends actually, about, you know, these could be real statement weekends for the club. And, splitting last week, but then losing both games this week, and another one at home, unfortunately, has really put the cat amongst the pigeons for the club now. And you don't have a lot of margin for error now, so it's, I know the games are close, 2 games in 3 days for 2 last weekends, but, we're not the only club doing that, and it's sometimes just got to find a way, and it's been a disappointing few weeks, but let's hope they can bounce back again this week.
And still no news on the third import. I think what we've seen over the last couple of weeks, even though it was a win against Cairns and then losses to Sydney, Perth and southeast Melbourne, is that they're probably missing that one piece that they need to really compete, and it's probably up for debate what sort of a type of player they need. But this replacement of Craig Randall's now dragged on a lot, and it's getting to the point where it's almost too late to even bring someone in.
Yeah, well, you're right, mate. It's now or never, you'd have to think. And, if we're going to bring someone in, we need to get him in and get him established in the team and help start winning games. And I personally, if it's going to happen, I think another ball handler is what's needed. And, you see what some of these point guards around the league do with, the Sydney and the JackJumpers and they're just calming heads. And that's taking nothing away from Mitch McCann, but it'd be nice to have another point guard type of player. Doesn't even, could be a 1-2 sort of guy alongside him, and I think that would just straighten us out a little bit. I know there is a bit of a thought that we need a defensive big, and I guess a case could be made for that as well. But we've got talent in the front court in DJ and Robert Franks. Kaiso and Galloway in his minutes, and he can always go small and move Cleveland into the 4th spot if necessary. So I think that's, we just need to stick with that, and that's our front court. So I personally, if they are going to go down the import road, I'd like to see another ball handler in there somewhere.
All right, Scott, what we've got you here for is to select our best team man for the NBL from round 10, thanks to Sports Card World. It's called the Galen Award in honour of the one and only Galen Young, who left us way too early. But 3 guys that really stood out to me from round 10, Scott, and I'll throw them at you and you can take a pick at your winner. But I think one of our criteria is winning games, and Melbourne United, they did almost everything right to win 2 games this weekend, but then they lost it in the last 5 seconds against the Perth Wildcats on Monday night, but they did win against Brisbane before that. So I think the difference with Shea Lee in that lineup is significant. I think instantly they look a much better team. So because of that, I want to throw Shea Lee in the mix this week. The other one is up in Cairns, Shannon Scott. I think he goes hugely underrated. It's a team full of excitement machines with Keanu Pinder and Tajir McCall and guys that play with such great energy, but Shannon Scott is the guy that's that cool head on the team. He's a good defender, a good rebounder, and a really good point guard on that team. So I think he had a massive game as well against the Illawarra Hawks in that double overtime win, and I want to put him in the mix for this weekend. The other one is a man that you saw in person in Adelaide last week as well, and his 2 best games in the NBL, Tayshaun Thomas for the Perth Wildcats as well. He started off with 22 points and 8 rebounds in that win against Adelaide that you saw, and then Monday night against Melbourne United, he was able to back it up with another 13 points and 7 rebounds. And I think with him being that presence inside for them, the Wildcats look an instantly better team. So, Scott, for the Galen winner for this week, would you like to pick one of those or somebody else?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with all those people, mate. I think think you're right about Shaylee. I think that we'd seen him healthy the whole season. I think we'd probably be looking at Melbourne United in a completely different position to where they are currently. And you're right about Shadow Scott. But I think Taylor's it for me this week. I suppose he sort of threw it up first hand, and he was excellent and very, very efficient. And I think what you see now with the Wildcats is those guys starting to find their niche in the league, and the Wildcats are probably doing, I guess, what we would hope the 36ers were doing, winning these couple of games and getting a bit of momentum happening. But unfortunately, that hasn't been the case here. So I think I'm going to go with Taylor this weekend, and developing into a very, very handy addition to that squad, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Tayshaun Thomas, and congratulations to him for winning the Galen Award, is that over the past week, his family's arrived in town. So his partner and his young child have joined him in Perth, and gee, what a difference it's made.
Oh, you don't underestimate that either. It's no question being away from your family. And like you said, not just around the corner, you're on the other side of the world as well. So I've no doubt that's been a really good thing for him, and obviously the results back that up as well.
Now, Scott, last couple of weeks we've talked about Sam McKinnon coaching the Brisbane Bullets, and he couldn't have made it any clearer after their game against Melbourne United on the weekend that he wanted this coaching job for the rest of the season. Less than 48 hours later, we found out that he wouldn't be coaching anymore, and I think he had been given the ultimatum that he could only be the coach or the GM of basketball. He couldn't do both, and he decided to stay with his GM role. All of a sudden, Greg Vanderjagt was appointed. I don't know if he ever knew that he was appointed, and as far as we can tell, they're still on the lookout for somebody else to actually bring in from the outside. What's going on at the Brisbane Bullets?
Oh, mate, from the outside looking in, it's just an absolute shambles, isn't it? I think, it's hard not to think anything else. It's my understanding is, Vanderjagt wasn't even told, and it came out in the press before he even knew about it, and you just got to scratch your head and wonder what is going on. It's a strange one, that's for sure. So I think at the start of the year, a lot of pundits had Brisbane, very, very highly up in their, in their final standings. I guess when you have someone like Aaron Bain to add to that mix, along with Sobe and hopefully a couple of good imports, you probably would be thinking that way. But I'm happy with the way. Well, no, I'm happy to say, but I didn't have them in my finals contention, and I really don't think that anyone could have seen what's happening so far. That's for sure.
Now, the Bullets coming to town now Saturday night, Scott. Whoever's coaching, whatever's going on with the Brisbane Bullets, this has to be a must-win game for the 36ers at 6 and 8, and then with the JackJumpers to come on Monday. What are you hoping to see?
Well, for us, it's got to be nothing less than a victory. I don't think there's any way of dressing this up, and it just has to be. To me, almost, I'd say that almost regardless of who we were going to be playing. I think it's time that line was drawn in the sand, and we started establishing ourselves as the team that I think we all thought we would be, and I think that the team we all think we still can be. So look, I would I'd want to see in that first from the tip off that there's a real hunger there and a real desire to get down and dirty and play a tough brand of basketball and really set a tone that this next couple of hours is going to be ours. So I'm hoping that's the case, and then once again we're back up again on Monday, so you get a chance to have two home games, very close succession, which if I was the players and the coaching staff, I think it's probably what you want to have when you find yourselves in this position, to be able to come out and bang in the lead up to Christmas, and once again set the season back up, and it has been such an up and down season with so many, I guess you call, upsets and road wins. There's still opportunity for a team that's going to get on a roll. So but once again, it sort of has to start here on Saturday night against the Brisbane Bullets, and fingers crossed that's what we see.
Now, quite a busy time of the year for you, Scott, as we know. As we talked about over the last couple of years on Sixers Fix, and we're delighted to have you as part of Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle now this season. But Christmas time, birthday time for you, holiday camp time with the 36ers. I hope you've been able to sneak in some premium wine tours as well. You've got to keep the family happy as well. We'll do our best to catch up next week, but hopefully the 36ers can give you a couple of wins to celebrate when we try and catch up next week.
That'll be very nice, mate, and a couple of 36 holiday camps on the 21st and the 22nd next week, which are always fun with 120 odd screaming kids. So no, it's going to be a good few days, and like I said, a couple of wins really add to that festive season.
Now, all the best getting through that, Scott, and we hope to catch up with you next week, and hopefully it's after a couple of those Adelaide wins for you.
Yeah, thanks, mate. Appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to Hoop 7's Basketball Hustle. Thank you to Matty Knight and Scott Ninnis and Damien Martin for taking care of our awards for round 10, Cody. Thanks for joining me once again. A couple of big milestones I want to get your thoughts on before we get to the preview for this week. Just run me through your quick thoughts. Chris Goulding, 400 NBL games. His teammate, Shea Ili, 200 NBL games. His other teammate, Brad Newley, 300 NBL games. And then Cam Glidden, only fitting that it's back in Perth, that he'll play his 300th NBL game when the New Zealand Breakers play the Wildcats on Friday night. What are your quick thoughts on the four of those?
Oh, look, obviously with Melbourne, a few guys there with lots of games under their belt. We saw Goulding hit the 1,000 threes last week, so we didn't really get to talk about that too much, but unbelievable accomplishment and, you know, similar to Buddy kicking his 1,000th. Like, it's something that we probably won't see again, because of the way it's played now and the shorter games. And
well, there's no one currently in the league that's
not even close. Not
yeah.
even close. I think the closest is still in the 500s. I think they were talking about. So yeah, that probably won't be touched again. So big couple of weeks for him. And
have you ever forgotten that 50 that he scored on?
Nope.
That he scored on your Sydney Kings?
Not at all. Not against the defensive specialist in Sam Young that we had. Yeah, no, certainly won't forget that anytime soon. And it seems to get brought up on the cast a lot, so I tend to mute it for a while. Yeah. But no, look, and then Shea Ili obviously been unbelievable for his career, and Brad Newley as well. Three guys that have been really good for the league for so long, so really cool to see. And then Cammy Glidden. Big fan of Cammy's. Love the way he plays, and I think he's been a bit underutilized for the past few years in his career, and to see him reach a milestone would be really good to see in front of his home fans, and I'll actually be in the building that night, so it'll be cool to see that.
Yeah, when he signed at New Zealand, I spoke to Cam about the frustration of the last 2 years, how he had high hopes of going to the Phoenix and playing a big role on that team, but it never quite happened. He had that one breakout game late last season where I think he hit 6 threes, and then all of a sudden he was back to the back of the bench the very next game and hardly played again. So he was hoping, at least for these 2 seasons that he signed in New Zealand, to play a bigger role in the team. And funnily enough, his minutes have probably stayed around the same, but when he's on the court, he's got the full backing of Modi Mayor to go out there and get it done. So he's playing with great confidence and playing a good role in this team. And more importantly, it looks like he's enjoying himself.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. And it's something that you've obviously got to enjoy where you're playing. And we've seen it with multiple guys, like the right coach for the right player. Yeah. You know, if you're in the wrong situation for yourself, you know, obviously nothing against the coaches or anything like that. It's just the way they play and their style. And some players just don't fit in that properly. Yeah. Look, end of his Cairns career, we saw him as the go-to guy for them. So we know he can do it. So it's good to see that he's stepped up a bit for New Zealand and is playing some good minutes for them, and his confidence is back.
All right, Cody, let's get into round 11, because once we get to Wednesday night, we've got a game every single day for the next few weeks to look forward to. So no break from the NBL. If you're looking for one, we'll just keep running through even Christmas Day, which we might talk about next week, what your thoughts are on the Christmas Day game as well, Cody. But let's get to round 11. Wednesday night it starts. The Cairns Taipans at home to the Brisbane Bullets. The Bullets will at least have their new import available, but the Taipans are fighting for that top 4 spot. This is a must-win game for them.
It is, and I think they've really got to stamp their authority in this week, and especially against the Brisbane team that's a bit all over the place right now, but they are starting to play a bit better basketball. But Cairns really need to knuckle down and get a good solid win here just to kind of cement their spot a bit.
Is it important for the Bullets to announce at least that Sam McKinnon is locked in for the rest of the season? Do they just need to give, more importantly, the playing group that clarity of what's going to happen?
Yeah, I think so. And I can't see them bringing in someone else.
Not now.
I don't see a point in bringing someone else in. It's one of those things that it's actually kind of surprising they've brought another player in, especially an import. So, I wouldn't expect a new coach to come in anytime soon. So I think they do need to announce that Sam McKinnon is going is
especially when Sam's making it so clear how much he wants the job.
He wants it, exactly. So he's letting it be known so that if it doesn't happen, then it's not falling on him.
No. Thursday night, throwdown, the fourth and final throwdown of the season. This is a big game. So Melbourne United, they can't afford to drop too many more games. I think to make the top 6, you probably can only afford to lose maybe 14 games for the season. They've already lost 11.
Yeah. So
they need to get back to winning. They need to try to bounce back from Monday night. But as we talked about, the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix in good form, especially against these teams below them. They just keep taking care of business.
Yeah, they do. And this is always a good game. The Victorian rivalry. But look, I think Southeast Melbourne are just too talented right now, especially with a full squad. Like we've said, Melbourne are playing better basketball, and we saw that against Perth, but Phoenix is kind of that step ahead right now. So, Melbourne need to win it, but I don't think they will.
Yeah. Friday night, doubleheader, 2 really interesting games. So, first of all, your 2 old teams doing battle again. Cody, in Wollongong, the Illawarra Hawks against the Sydney Kings. The Hawks will have a chip on their shoulder about how they lost last time because they shouldn't have lost last time against them, and they did play better against Cairns, but Sydney will have a chip on their shoulder as well about what just happened to them to Tasmania.
Yeah, it's just a flip of the coin on what Hawks team shows up, unfortunately, right now. And, I mean, look, if they're in striking distance come the fourth quarter, who knows?
Yeah.
But, Sydney, I think, especially after the weekend they had, kind of getting out of jail against New Zealand and then just giving one away against Tassie, I think it'll be a heck of a week on the training court for the squad. So,
can you give some insight after your team throws away a game like that? What is practice like that coming week?
It's a long film session. It's a long film session, and that's probably just the fourth quarter. So it's not a fun week, especially losing the way they did. Big turnaround. So. And it happened in 2 games where, like we said, they got out of jail a bit against New Zealand and obviously didn't against Tassie. But it's not a pretty week for you, and I'm sure Chase Buford's got them watching plenty of film and then out on the court for long periods of time. So I think they'll be up and ready, and I think they'll just be too much for the Hawks.
Second up, Perth Wildcats and the New Zealand Breakers. So Corey Webster again against his former team, as we talked about. Cam Glidden playing his 300th game. You'll be there in the building. What are you expecting?
Oh, a really good game. I'm hoping it's going to be a great one because it always is against these 2 teams. And it doesn't matter where they are on the ladder. And like we said in the lead up to the last game, or all the coverage was about, it's always a great game. And I'm sure Corey will come out full of confidence, doing what he did last time, and then obviously having a big weekend again. But New Zealand need to get this one. I think New Zealand need to win this one and kind of solidify their spot again. Very similar to Cairns and Sydney, and bit of a bumpy couple of weeks for them. And they need to get back to their winning ways and locking up on defense. And Perth's starting to play well, though. They really are starting to play well, so it's going to be interesting to see.
2 more games on Saturday. First up, another big game between 2 teams fighting over a spot in that top 4. Tasmania JackJumpers, first home game in a while for them, so they head back home to host the Cairns Taipans.
Yeah, big game because you've got a team that is probably one of the better defensive teams in the league versus one of the better transition teams in the league. So this one's always a fun matchup, and there's always lots going on, and it's tough because they've still got to guard Keanu, and with Tassie it's never a one-on-one thing; it's always team defense. So I think they do well that way, but it's always a fun matchup. I think Tassie get it done, just the way they're playing right now, just grinding it out and just getting it done over 40 minutes, not throwing haymakers at any time. It's just chipping away, and I think they get it done.
two teams in opposite situations to those top two teams. The Adelaide 36ers against the Brisbane Bullets. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Brizzy playing a bit more free now, which is good to see. New import coming in, so it'll be interesting to see how he fits into the squad this weekend. Tough because they're coming off a double header against Cairns, but look, Adelaide needs this. They have to win. Yep. They have to start getting wins on the board, especially against the lower teams, because otherwise their season's done.
Sure.
And they're not making the six. So it's a tough one, but I do think Adelaide get up for it. But I think it's going to be a fairly close one, actually.
CJ Bruden versus Sam McKinnon in the coaching matchup as well. I'm fascinated to see how they go for the first time. Sunday really tips off with a beauty. Southeast Melbourne Phoenix and the Sydney Kings. First time they've played each other this season. I think we'll learn a lot about both teams.
We certainly will, and it's going to be good to see Phoenix come against one of the top teams now. See where they're at. Again, Sydney's been a bit all over the shop, as we've seen, but can be so good. I'm really intrigued to see this one, and I've honestly got absolutely no idea who's going to win it.
I think that's a good thing. I think, like I said, I think we'll learn a lot about the championship credentials of both teams.
Sure.
Melbourne United, Illawarra Hawks then on Sunday. Just must win for Melbourne United at this point, but the Hawks can play spoilers. Yeah,
they can, and they have before, and
these two teams love going to overtime too.
Well, they do. They do. It's always a good game. Another matchup that's always a really good game, and like you said, Melbourne, another must-win for them. They can't afford to lose too many more if they really want to stay in touch with that top six. So, look, I think they do get it done, but wouldn't hate more free basketball and another overtime or two between these two teams.
No, it would be fantastic. Monday night, Adelaide 36ers hosting the Tasmania JackJumpers.
Tough one. Again, Tassie got the two big scoring teams this round, and again, Adelaide, another must win for them, and they need to start winning against teams above them as well. It's one thing to take care of teams below them, but they need to win against those top teams as well.
Well, there's someone in that top six they have to knock out.
Exactly. So look, I think Tassie get it done again. Like I said before, just the way they're playing, chipping away. I think defensively they'll just be too much for Adelaide.
And lastly for this round, even though there's not really a gap between rounds at the moment, but Tuesday night, the Cairns Taipans and the Perth Wildcats. Last time the Wildcats went up to Cairns, it was Todd Blanchfield's milestone night, and they blew the Taipans out of the water. Yeah. Did the Taipans hit back this time?
I think they do. It's just, I still struggle to see who's going to guard Keanu in that group, and really who's going to guard a lot of those guys on the Cairns team. But Perth playing better basketball, starting to figure it out a little bit on the defensive end. Still not the Perth Wildcats we're used to seeing, but I think Cairns get that one and steady their ship a little bit.
Okay, there we go, Cody. We got through a big show, plenty to talk about and plenty to look forward to now for us to come back next week as well. And we'll have our show leading into Christmas next week as well, and leading into the Christmas Day game for the first ever time. So thank you for joining me once again. Thank you to Hoop 7 for making it possible. I'll sign off with that and leave you with the final say.
Yeah, man, looking forward to lots of basketball over these next really a month. So looking forward to it, man.